The night before I was baptized, I was playing flag football. Typical of St. Louis, the soil, when it doesn't rain for a while, becomes as hard as concrete, and I knocked my head. I had suffered a mild concussion. I was cautioned to have someone check on me overnight and make sure that I didn't have any adverse symptoms. I came here the next morning, and Pastor Bill Yancey baptized me. I do not remember much about that night or that morning, so as we like to joke in our family, that I was as close to the mental state of a baby as I could be for my own baptism.
What Crossings does for people who are not preachers is that it allows them to hear a good sermon, even if one might not be preached.
All of my imperfections being swapped for generosity.
It's become such a way of life for me.
Crossings is not a sect of Christianity. Crossings is a tool that we use to understand Christianity.
A way of understanding life. It's a lens.
It really is good, and it is something new.
Shortly after my baptism, I filled out a little survey, and one of the things I said I liked was being part of a youth group. And within 3 weeks, I was at my first board meeting for the youth group. For the first 3 years, I just did what I had seen at the Catholic Church, where they had great leaders, and I did everything out of sheer energy, sheer force of energy. I didn't realize how much it took out of me. I started doing some research and found out that the average burnout time for a youth counselor is about 18 months, and I had pretty much doubled that. That's when I remember hearing about a member here who taught classes specifically to the laity, not the clergy, about Christianity and how it can cross into our daily lives. That person is Ed Shroeder. I found him walking out of the church on a hot summer day out in the parking lot from here, and I just said, "Hey Ed, can you tell me about these classes you're teaching? I hear great things." I took one class and ended up taking almost half of their curriculum. I didn't even know what their curriculum was at the time. Those classes worked for me, and it resonated with the way that I think, the way that I believe. But most of all, those classes were my confirmation experience. I learned what all of these things mean in this grand church history. In 1991, we went to a triennial youth gathering by bus. The bus trip was from St. Louis to Dallas. We found out later that the bus company backed out. Somehow we got replacement buses that were not really ready for a long distance trip. To make a long story short, we stopped at least 3 times for major repairs. Throughout it all, there were other youth counselors who felt that we should not share that information with all the youth, that it would make them panic. And I just felt it was most respectful of the young people to simply say, we are stuck here for the following reason. This is when we expect to find a change in our condition. This is when we expect to leave. And on that trip, I think all of those teenagers responded much better because they didn't feel like they were little kids. They didn't feel like they were kept in the dark. All these little things, it's stuff that anybody could have done. And I think that up until that time, that it really was Crossings helping me to reflect on that and how to deal with that adversity, to absorb it, if you will, because I have all of my angst being absorbed in the love of Jesus, and to be able to share and to be transparent and open. And it's one of the great themes of Jesus' ministry is that it's an open ministry. Because I have received that, I'm able to give that as well. So how do I apply this Crossings lens or Crossings method to my life? It's not anything that I can actively pull out of a toolbox. I am who I am. I react the way I react. But in moments of reflection, I realize why I did certain things or didn't do certain things, as we all do, but I especially do so through this Crossings lens. And in that reflection, in that meditation, in that self-assessment, it prepares me for the next time I face adversity. There are many times when I've been in situations where I have no idea how I got through it. I like to say, well, wouldn't any sane person make that choice? And again, it's not just that choice, it's how the choice is made. It's how that choice is expressed when I'm talking with others. I could make the right decision, whatever right is, and I could be totally angry about it. I could be totally domineering about it. But I've become wired to be very respectful of others, to build upon what they have, to try to build dialogue and establish those lines of communications and trust. And I do a far better job of that with me having the base of Crossings. As I finished college and then graduate school, thinking about my career and things like what kind of relationship or marriage would I like to become a father, one of the things in my family that was not really spoken about was whether or not to try to find a Chinese girlfriend and eventually Chinese wife. I know that that's a question that touches many people, whatever their background. And for me, I didn't know what the family expectations were. It, of course, would please all my relatives, especially my grandparents, if I were to do that. That wasn't something that was necessarily easy to do, nor was it something that I wanted to have at the top of my list. I wanted somebody who I could laugh with, that I would be able to go through the years with and be able to be intellectually stimulating, have common values, to be able to raise children together, to manage money together, all of these, without which marriage becomes extremely difficult, if not impossible. Crossings helped me because it helped me understand the priorities. There's my relationship with others, and there's God's relationship with me, and I was putting expectations on myself that were not necessarily mine. I realized that it wasn't so much the decision, it wasn't who I actually met, even though I feel tremendously blessed to have met my wife. It was that doubt. That's the part that Crossings really helps me with. And that's the sort of thing that I think Crossings does for so many people, is show how God's love for us covers that. My life without Crossings is a lot like the 1970s TV show, The Hulk. I would not be able to handle my own anger, my own temper, my own shortcomings, my own doubts and my own fears. I don't know how else to describe it because I've lived my life this way for more than half my life. I would not be as patient. I would not be as kind. I would not be as giving to the community, whoever they are. I do feel like I'm a much better person having Crossings or the Crossings lens in my life.